lights out. Get our bot in here. And get the Discord taken care of. So, hello everyone. This is Chris Ingerson, and it is I was gonna say January, December 14th, and this is the December 14th TextQuest Devstream. So today we are TextQuest Devstream is not correct. The December 14th weekend Devstream. Today we're going to be working on our side project some more. Particularly, we are going to be looking at addressables is the plan. I'm hoping we can get there. But before that, we're going to be looking at implementing mini games because the entire point of this sort of this project is basically to have it set up so that we can go to different arcade machines and play different mini games. So, for example, I'm going to if we can. So we would basically fly over to whichever arcade cabinet we wanted to play a game on. Oh man, that third one is really just too far away. And then we would see probably information about the game. We would have its title screen, and maybe I would show some like a description or something. But we're gonna get the ground or the base for that system set up today, and I'm hoping that's going to let us actually get into addressables because that's something that I'm getting more invested in over time. We're starting to use it. We've used it on one project at work, and I was responsible for setting up the system for that to make our lives easier for requesting addressables. And I think the system I have at work is pretty good, and I would just kind of like to basically experiment with addressables to see what I can get and if I can do weird stuff with them. One quick note, as you can see, we do have the screen animation shader working. So now this is iterating through a... let me go ahead and pause, actually. And we can go down here to screen animation mat. You can see that we have this flipbook style animation. It's basically iterating through from the top left to the bottom right. And we can specify row count, column count, so how many rows there are, how many columns there are, and then the number of frames we have, 8 for this one in particular, and then the FPS, so 1 frame per second, basically. So if I turn off maximize on play and crank this up to, let's say, 2, you'll see that it's iterating through there much faster. If I made this 10, it'd be like super fast. Let's go 20. Okay, that's getting epileptic levels. So it's pretty good. We're not. Mostly, I wanted to do this to have quote-unquote title screens when you're far away, and probably what I would do is I would actually switch to a higher res title screen when you actually zoom in on a particular cabinet, so that you can see more detail. But the texture animation that we're using is largely just meant to be like a way of conveying motion and attract screens from far away. In addition to that, I do also have a graph that I have not. Well, so the graph itself is finished, but I haven't made a material for it. I guess I could do that right now, actually. So let's go ahead and create material. I'm just going to call this mat underscore screen static. So all this is just emulating a old CRT TV static effect. It's just a noise. I'm going to put this over here. And the idea for this is if there are arcade machines that are not available, then you would just see this instead of having a title screen and a track screen and all that. So we're going to start with some coding today. So that's kind of where the project is currently. It is getting to be to a pretty decent spot, actually. I am going to go ahead and come over here to Camera Manager. I'm going to select this. Man, I really wish that you would show me what you were doing, but I guess I can do solo. Like this. Okay, hold on. Let's go ahead and turn off ProGrids. Okay, so something like that-ish. probably a little bit better. All right. I'm going to go ahead and collapse some of this. Oh, I do also have a floor tile set up, but it's a little rough, but it's better than nothing. Ceiling is still just the base gray texture, but that's fine. We're not really using it for anything. Okay. Let's go ahead and collapse all of this. Get rid of you, get rid of you, get rid of you. We do have the most up-to-date substance stuff, so we're pretty good there. Oh, I probably should have brought in some audio, but it's fine. All right. So that is our core. We're going to need to go down to scripts, runtime, arcade, game selection. Actually, do I want... Okay, I guess I'm putting it here. That makes more sense, actually. So let's go ahead and open up our arcade game base. We started coding this last weekend, but we're going to flesh it out a lot more this weekend. The basics for this are going to be title screen and then a core game manager, which this is kind of what arcade game base is supposed to be. It's meant to be the like parent logic manager for each game. So we'll have various how to phrase it. So we would have each mini game for each arcade game would derive from arcade game base, and that would be the overall. I don't want to use the word monolithic class, but that's going to be like the manager class for that game, and then each game would have its own subscripts that would be handled. So in the case of Pong, we would have the arcade game base would be derived from for something like Pong Manager, and then from there it would be, we'd have the Pong Ball script and the Pong Paddle script and yada yada yada. But each one is going to have to each game has to have a core base of scripts and core base of functionality that we can infer is going to be there. That way, the main arcade scripts can actually reference that in an abstract way that's not going to be specific to each game. So to get started, I'm actually going to, before we even get into the arcade game base itself, we are going to look into data. So we're going to create a data folder. So this is going to be, I want to say C# script arcade game data. And this is going to contain information on things like the name of the game, Arcadia. This is going to be information on things like the name of the game and description, the title screen, material, all that good stuff. So we're going to go ahead and say this is going to be a struct, actually. I was going to make it a class, but I don't think we need to change anything ever. So I'm going to go with structs for now. In terms of the differences between structs and classes, there's not a huge amount of difference, honestly, for what we're doing. But structs in general, I try to use when it's pure data that's not really got too much functionality that it needs to handle. And that's fine as long as you do not have to assign references. If you have to assign references, then it will not. Structs don't work. You need a class, because if you assign a reference to a struct, it's going to rebuild the whole struct and blow away anything that it's referencing, so you can't do that. So we're going to go ahead and say public string title, public string description, public bool is available. I'm going to leave that. The is available thing is largely because I want to... This type of game eventually would probably have cycles where certain games would be cycled in and other games would be cycled out. But also, while we're setting up, we're not going to have certain games set up, which means that we need to basically just have them not be available, which means that it would show the static and you wouldn't be able to select it. Let's see, what else would we need? We would also want public material. This is going to be title mat, I guess. Yeah, that's fine. And what else? Probably some sort of ID, now that I think about it. Which I would really want to be using my collection system, actually. So for now, I guess I could recreate that system in here. That'd probably be fine. We're going to be class contain. That's redundant. Contains data on an arcade game. Okay, so from there, let's go ahead and leave this as is. We're going to go ahead and add text area 3 and 5. That's pretty good. Let's do some tool tipping. The name of the game. This. Boom. The, we'll just say, description for the game. Is the game available to play? And then the material to show on the game when it is viewed from a distance. I'm actually going to rename this, so this will be a tracked mat, and then that's pretty good for now. Let's go ahead and let that compile real quick. While that's going on, I need to take my headset off for a second because I got to shut my blinds. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. My desktop is positioned perfectly, so around 3 to 4, or in the summer around 5, I think. In the afternoon, the sun just shines on my screens and makes it impossible to see. Okay, so that's our game data. Now we need a collection. So we're gonna need, well, actually, we wouldn't want this to be centralized. We would want this to be on a given object. So we're gonna want to say, see, here's where it gets awkward because I kind of would think that would be in game selection instead. Yeah, okay. Let's go ahead and move this over to here then. We're also going to want to have a game ID, which for now, I guess I'll just make an enum. Long term, I would probably want something a little bit more like the collection system that I have in TextQuest, but I don't feel like porting that right now, so we're just going to go ahead and say arcade game ID. Okay, open that up. If and it feels like it, I guess. Alright, this is going to be in the Arcadia namespace. Get rid of you. It's going to derive from byte. It's going to be an enum. And we're just going to say IDs for various arcade games. We're going to go ahead and start with none, which is always going to be 0. And then from there, we'll say ping is going to be 10. Dwarfman is equal to 20. Ms. Dwarfman is equal to 22. I know that that's not how you spell dwarf, but that's how I kind of wanted to spell it, just to stylize it a little bit more. And we are making obvious, arcade bootleg type games, basically. That's good enough, actually, for now. Let's just leave those two. Okay, let's come back to here. I'm going to go ahead and add public arcade game ID, tooltip ID for the game. Okay, let's go ahead and come back to here. And now we're going to need to have a new folder in here that's probably going to be called camera. And that's going to contain arcade camera manager and Cinema Machine camera position. So we're going to come back to here, create folder, camera. Move both of these into here. And then we're going to want to have a new folder called cabinet. Create folder, cabinets. All right, we're going to say create. And then a C# script that I'm going to call arcade cabinet. I think that's pretty straightforward. That's all I really need. Okay. From here, we are going to come up to here. I'm going to keep this as mono behavior. I actually think I'm going to eventually have a core class called like selection or something like that, or camera selection. And that's going to be every camera position is going to have a corresponding target camera selection. That would basically contain information about what happens at that location. And I can't just make it the core arcade cabinet because there are areas that are not necessarily arcade games that I would want you to be able to go to. Like you can see that I have this token exchange folder here. Eventually it would be nice to allow for like going to a token machine to basically get free plays. And there'd be some interactions there that aren't really arcade cabinet stuff, so I'd want it to be handled differently. And then there's probably going to be like a, I don't know, some kind of ticket exchange or some kind of bar where you can see options and all that information. So let's go ahead and I guess, let's see, Cinema Machine camera position just has the camera itself. Yeah. Okay. So let's go ahead and say create C# script. I'm going to call this arcade camera target, I guess. And that's just purely going to be an abstract class that really doesn't do much. So we're going to make this an abstract Arcadia, derived from arcade camera target. Okay, and we're going to say, let's see here, public and abstract void on, no. Camera enter public abstract void camera leave. We'll say camera exit. That's better. Exit. So these are functions that would be called when the camera starts to select it and when the camera moves away from it, basically. We could probably do this actually. So let's do start enter, and then public abstract void camera end enter, and then public abstract void camera end exit, start exit. What else would we want? That's probably good enough, actually. So, called when the camera starts to transition to this target. Called when the camera finish is transitioning to this target. starts to transition away from this target, called when the camera finishes transitioning away from this target. Okay, so now we can come back over to here, and then also to here. Arcadia, we're going to come up to here, core scripts runtime, arcade game selection, camera, we're going to say arcade camera target, I think. Ah, wait, that's my script actually. Center machine camera position, here we are. And then we're going to go ahead and say, hold on. I should probably just rename that to arcade camera position. This is fine. So we're going to go ahead and come up to here. We're going to say serialize field. Come on, work with me. Private arcade camera target. Camera target is equal to null. I probably might as well just make this be public. These are data classes. So public. I'm sure this is being referenced, but we don't really need it to be. It's going to be camera. We're going to come back over to here, get rid of you. Okay, and then, so move to target index. So from here, we are going to say, what to do about this? I guess we would say previous index is equal to position index. So that means we're going to do this. Camera positions of of previous index dot camera target. Ooh. Right. I wonder if I can get a callback from this. Nope. Of course not. Crud. So I need some way of retrieving callbacks from Cinemachine for this to function. So we're going to have to come back over to here, arcade cabinet. We're going to override camera start enter, override camera end enter, override camera start exit, and then override camera end exit. Okay, from here, let's go ahead and just throw in some debug. So debug.log, start enter, plus name. Pretty much just going to copy this a few times. And enter. Start exit. And exit. Okay. I'm going to come back over to here. And here is where it gets a little awkward. So I'm going to just go ahead and say to do call start camera exit on previous position index. Okay. And then what do we want to do about this? I suppose I could just reduce it to an end, or to a transition away and transition from. I'm sorry, transition to and transition from call, and not have a start and end version to everything. But the reason I want to start and end version is because on the start call, I would basically start loading assets from addressables, and then on the end call, I would pop up anything that I really wanted to pop up. So I might delay a splash screen, for example, or the title drop until you get there. And then likewise, when we start transitioning away, I want it to start cleaning up assets, and then when it finishes transitioning away, that's when I would unload assets completely, because we wouldn't need to worry about them anymore. So I do need to figure out how to do callbacks from this. Um, so, man, let's see. Cinemachine dot. We do callbacks. How about utility? Oh, there's a runtime utility. Huh. Really? You're a. Okay, weird. What use is that? Utility dot. Let's see. Debug damper. Heading tracker position predictor spline. Unique returning. Unity bracket extensions. Okay, so that's not particularly great. If I come up to here, private Cinemachine. Okay, I guess we're gonna just say using Cinemachine. It's gonna be Cinemachine. Brain, I guess. Brain camera is equal to let's come down to here. Brain camera dot. Nope. Active blend. Active virtual camera. Broadcast message. Let's see if we can get anything. Book repeating camera activated event. That. Okay, camera cut event could also be good. That is useful. Okay, I'm guessing that's going to be the one that I need. Um, hmm. Okay, I'm going to look this up, actually. Events, I guess. Let's see, blend settings. I know that's a thing. When it changes shot and fires event when the virtual camera goes live. Okay, so, I mean, this is kind of what I'm wanting to do. I'm just wondering if first frame of the blend. Okay. So both of those events only fire when the blend starts, so when we start moving to the next thing, but it doesn't handle what happens when we finish the blend, which is a bit annoying. I suppose. I suppose I could check if it's blending. Maybe that's a thing. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. I'm going to say brain camera blend. Oh boy, I really don't want to do that, but okay. So we can check if it is blending, and what we could do is we shouldn't have any camera cut events. Everything should be just like fine. So what we would do is basically listen for the camera cut event to fire, or the camera blend event, and once that fires, we will then continuously check if it is blending, and then if it fires again while we're doing that check, we will just terminate that and then like invoke the finish exit, and then we would move on to the next one. I think we can get that working. Okay, so that's going to require a couple of things. One, we're going to need to come down to here, and I'm going to say private void on camera blend start machine brain. Okay, and then we're going to need an update. We're going to need a couple of things. I'm going to say private bool is blending is equal to false. Okay, so on camera blend start, we're going to set is blending to be true. Okay. And then we're going to say down here, if is blending, then we we are going to say if Cinemachine brain, nope, not that, brain camera dot is blending, so if not that, I'm going to say is blending is equal to false, and then call, okay, so we're going to say camera positions of previous index dot camera target dot end exit, I think. And then we get to call camera positions of current, of index, I guess. Is that just what I called it? Of position index dot camera target dot camera and enter. Okay, I think that's pretty much all we need to do. So we can get rid of all of that. Come back down to here. We need to go to start, and I'm going to come over to here. We're going to say brain camera dot that dot add listener on camera blend start. And this is going to be in camera cut event, activated event, I think is what I want. Correct? Yes. Yes, that's what I want. Okay. And this is supposed to take a iCinemachine camera, an iCinemachine camera? Oh. Okay, interesting. iCinemachine camera, prev camera, iCinemachine camera, next camera. We don't actually care about this, so I think that's fine. All we need to know is when the blend happens, so that's actually fine. Then we are going to go down to here. So if the position index does not equal value, then we're going to say camera positions of previous index. I'm actually going to come up to here. Dot camera target dot start camera start exit, and then camera positions. Oh, I guess I should probably do that first. So we're going to do that down here first. Yeah, that's fine. Of position index dot camera target dot camera start enter, I think is what we want. Okay, I'm reasonably sure that that is what we need to do. But if we are already blending, then we actually need to terminate that early. So we're going to say if is blending, then we're going to say, and this would be done if you like move to the right and then move to the right again while it's blending. So we need to finish the previous blend, or at the very least unload things and then move on to the next one. So I think what that means is we want to say basically this. Except, oh man, yeah, that's not great. We would actually want to call, so previous index is going to get, yeah, end exit. And then the current one is actually going to have camera start exit, I think. Which actually we don't need to do. So that'll handle everything else. So that just means we have to be careful and allow end exit and start enter and start exit to basically cancel previous end or start exit commands. Yeah, that is. Yeah, that can be a little complicated. It's only 4 steps of logic, but man. Let's see if this works in practice. I'm also going to go ahead and come over here and rename this to arcade camera position. Okay, so we're going to let that compile. It will be all hunky-dory. Everything will be amazing and wonderful and perfect. Won't that be nice? Okay, what's going on? I'm going to rename this to arcade camera position. Arcade camera position. Okay, so now let this compile. Go back to here. All right. I'm going to keep off maximize on play. We're going to turn on the console. So we should see this happen. It shouldn't happen on start, I'm hoping, because we're assigning that event listener after start. Oh, right. I totally forgot. I got to assign those cameras. Okay. So for this, we're going to go ahead and come down to props, cabinets. Come over to here. I'm going to add a couple of things. We're going to get rid of you. Okay. So all of these are going to have arcade cabinets. That's probably fine. Go ahead and set this up real quick. Arcade cabinets are going to have a serialized. I guess it'll be public actually. So public arcade data. Data is equal to new arcade game data. That's all fine. We're going to go ahead and let that compile real quick. And on top of that, I'm going to need. What else would I want? An overview, I guess. So let's go ahead and say folder. Over. Arcade overview. This a second. Arcade overview is going to be derived from the arcade camera target as well. Arcadia, arcade camera target. I'm gonna come over here. I'm just gonna grab this, paste that. Okay, and I'm also gonna change this to data.id. These ones. All right. So for now, let's go ahead and come back to here. Let that compile. And then we can actually change these things. So we're going to open up data. This is going to be ping. This is going to be Dwarf Man, and this is going to be Miss Dwarf Man. Go ahead and say ping. It's not Bong. Dwarf Man. Dwarf. Dwarf Man. Dwarf 2. Dwarf 2. Dwarf 2. It's surprisingly hard to say to type that. And these are not going to be available. Okay. Finally, track mat should probably... That's a good question. That should probably be addressable, actually, but for now, we're going to leave it as is. All right. Let's go ahead and put our attract mat as this simple screen animation. I'm not going to worry about the others. Well, yeah, no, we're not going to worry about the others for now. Okay, so in addition to this, we're going to come over here to VCam overview. I'm just going to go ahead and assign a child below this, and we're just going to call this overview. Come down here, arcade overview. We're going to come up here, and arcade overview is going to go here. And finally, boom, boom, and boom. Okay. So, from here, we can now assign our Cinemachine brain. And that should handle everything, I think. Let's clear this. Let's hit play again and see what happens. Interesting. I guess that's fine. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go to the right. Okay, I'm going to clear this and we're going to go to the right again. Oops, down here. Start ping, enter Dwarfman, end exit ping, and enter Dwarfman. There we go. So that's basically going in the sequence that I want. It's starting the exit on one, starting the enter on one, and then ending exit and ending enter on one and the other. Cool. So that system is in place. Now I think we can start working on some transition effects. So for this, we are going to come up to here. So we have our screen static here. I'm going to go to Arcade Cabinet. We're going to open this up. And Arcane, not the game ID, game data. Do I want to... Yeah, I'll allow that to be customizable. So tooltip, then public material, unavailable mat material to show when the game is not available. Okay. Then we're going to come down here to Arcade Cabinet. And what we're going to do here, probably also, we're going to say private void start. So on start, we're going to say if data.is available, then we're going to do one thing, else, we're going to do something else. We are going to need to have access to, keep that up at the top. Then we're going to say serialized field, private mesh renderer, screen renderer is equal to null. Then we're going to say screen renderer dot shared materials. We'll say shared material is equal to data dot attract mat, and then screen renderer dot shared material is equal to data dot unavailable mat. Let's try that. The hope here is that it will appropriately update. I don't remember if assigning shared material will affect all of the instances of that mesh. I would not be surprised, honestly, but I'm hoping that I can just kind of override the shared materials on a per instance basis, which, now that I'm saying out loud, kind of sounds stupid, but you know, hey. So I'm going to put the static here. Okay, and actually, yeah, okay. We're gonna go over to here. Yeah, okay, fine. We're gonna just remove these. I'm gonna come up to here. I'm gonna add the arcade cabinet back, and our attract mat is gonna be, well, our unavailable mat is gonna be this at the very least. Screen animation is probably good for that, and our screen is going to go here. Okay, so now I can come back to here, and I can actually set these up again. So there's going to be ping, ping, it's not pong, and then this is going to be Dwarfman, Dwarfman, Dwarf. I'm just going to copy this actually for Ms. Dwarfman. And Ms. Dwarfman, Ms. Dwarfman. It's all fine. 2. Okay. Now I need to come back to here and reassign these. So this is going to go here. It's going to go here. It's going to go here. I'm also going to rename these. It's going to be ping. It's going to be Dwarfman. Ms. Dwarfman. Okay, just so that we can make that a little bit easier on ourselves. Let's go ahead and save, and I think that will be all we need. So, oh wait, I almost forgot. We gotta come back here, actually. Only ping is available. Everything else is not. So, what should happen now is on start, ping will be available, but Dwarfman and Miss Dwarfman will not be. Nice. Okay, so there's our static screens. If we were to come over to here, you can see that we would see our sprite animation. That's all fine. I'm going to start this, and then boom. So it's broken, which is good. Like it's not busted. Like it's functioning the way we expect it to. It just looks like it's not available. That's good. And then from up here, we can come back to here. Nice. I'm also going to cycle through to here, and then I'm going to hit back. I should probably do that actually. I'm going to turn off maximize on play, go over to the console. We're going to make sure that skipping over will properly call things. I mean, it should, but just to be safe. All right, so we're going to go ahead and say. So that's started to call start exit on overview, start enter on ping. It snapped to end exit on overview and start exit on ping. It skipped the end enter. That's good. Start enter Dwarfman, end enter, or end exit ping, end enter. Okay, so that seems like it's functioning as we would expect. Cool. So that's properly swapping out and all that. Nice. So from here, now we're going to want to pull up information, I guess. Actually, I'm going to maximize on play here. I'm going to think about how I want to handle this. I would like to, yeah, we'll show information. So we'll have like a 3D canvas or a world space canvas basically showing this information. So when you get over to here, it'll like pop up some animations to basically show information about the game and about what it can be, or what the content of the game is going to be. I need to be careful here because part of this challenge is I want I ultimately this game would be a mobile game, not so much a console game. Although I mean it could be a console game in theory, but the design process we had for this at work was originally going to be a mobile game, and that means I need to handle vertical and horizontal layouts. And that means I can't expect for a 3D space that I'll be able to see to the left or to the right of this. It could all be up front, basically. Oh, man, that complicates a lot of things. Okay, man, trying to do a 3D aspect or trying to do a 3D space UI that supports different aspect ratios has got to be a pain. Um, well, at any rate, let's go ahead and clear this. I'm going to. I'm trying to think about how I would handle this. I don't know if it would be better to have a high fidelity screen that we swap in here, basically disable this and play. Nope, that's what I was saying. That's what I was originally thinking. A render texture that would basically have a texture of the game being played that would then be mapped to that material. That makes sense. Okay. So for this is going to be interesting. We are going to want to do a few things. We're going to want to come over here to arcade game data. And then we're going to say, basically going to copy this. This is going to be title mat. You know, yeah, say viewed up close. So I actually need to have a separate thing here. So this is going to go for. It's going to go under arcade cabinets, I guess. So this is going to be a new script. I'm going to call this arcade cabinet title screen. Yes, I think that's right. All right. Now the reason that I want to do this is because I would actually like to have higher fidelity screens that aren't pre-recorded videos or sprite sheets, and that this would essentially allow us to play like a simple animation that would then be rendered to a texture that could then be put onto the screen to make it feel like there's a title screen going on there. So let's try this. This is going to be Arcadia. This is going to have serialized field, private render texture, render texture is equal to null. It's going to be tooltip v render texture to render the title screen to. Okay. This is also going to be an abstract class because it's going to be the base class for everything. Do I need to worry about material? Nope, the material is, ironically enough, immaterial. From this, I would probably want, let's see, addressables would probably come into play. I think we're getting close to that point. But I think the addressables would be handled on the child classes. So there's not really a lot that we need to spawn here. So I think we're just going to leave this as is. And then arcade manager, camera manager, camera start ender. All right, so an arcade cabinet. We are going to have on here. Okay, maybe I will do this. So I'm gonna. Well, no, that's fine. So we're gonna pop back over to here. I need to spawn this in, so we are going to need to have a tooltip public arcade cabinet title screen prefab. This is a struct. That's fine, I want to say. So there's going to be prefab for the title screen to... I wonder if that makes sense. Long term, it might make more sense to have the the core gameplay basically get instantiated and put somewhere like below the world, and then from there we could have it show its title screen. Then we could just render straight from that. Um, that has some benefits. If we do it that way, we could actually do some pretty seamless transitioning where it would, like if you choose to go into the game, then it would just immediately cut to that frame. Um, so that kind of makes more sense. So we're probably going to change that. Although we will still want to keep this title screen content, I guess. Um, yeah. But in that case, it's not really necessary here. We could just have it be done on arcade cabinet or on arcade game data, I think, and that would just be done from the title mat. I'm pretty sure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think I know what I'm doing here. So we're gonna say to do need a function to. Let's go ahead and say it's gonna be an abstract. I'm gonna say public. Oops, can't spell. Public void start game. And this is going to be abstract and then public, public abstract void end game. I guess I'm just going to rename this to game start. And we're going to actually make this virtual for both of these. Okay, so there's going to be game end dot invoke game start dot invoke. Okay, that's pretty straightforward actually. Fire called when the player starts to play the game. Called when the player finishes playing the game. Okay. Note this is not called when the game actually starts, but when the players. I guess I'm trying to differentiate here because in theory the game would technically be playing before you start the game, similar to how arcade machines are obviously running their title screens before you actually start to play the game. Um, okay. Let's go ahead and we're gonna come back to arcade camera target. I think we're done with that for a while. Okay. I think we're good. So let's go ahead and start our base then. Okay. Excuse me, had to sneeze. Okay, so this title screen is less useful than we need. For this, we're getting into addressables territory. So I don't actually want to have direct references to render textures and the like. I'm going to want to basically load the render texture into memory and then grab it. So that's going to be interesting. So that means we're actually going to start changing things. So title mat needs to be addressable, as does attract mat and unavailable mat, I want to say. All of those need to be addressable. Okay. That means that we can actually come up to here and say using Unity engine dot addressable assets, and just so that I'm not crazy, public asset reference T. Okay. Yep. Okay. Cool. So I need to do that myself. Cool. That's fine. We're gonna get rid of this, and we don't need to handle any of that. Okay. Cool. So we're gonna let this compile real quick. I'm going to go ahead and collapse this. Actually, before I do anything else, I guess these are going to be marked as addressable now. All right, we're going to save that. We are going to, so I'm going to start marking things as addressable, but I'm not necessarily going to handle their paths yet. You can see that it's basically the path from the assets folder. And we probably want to simplify this down to something like, I don't know, arcade cabinets, or arcade slash cabinets slash materials, probably, something like that. So I'm guessing it would be something like this. Arcade slash cabinets, and then basically here. There we go. Something like that. Go ahead and copy that. Come back down to here. Come back over to here. Boom. All right. And from here, we are also going to want, let's see. So this is going to be our placeholder stuff, obviously. And I'm going to go ahead and open up window. I think it's under, I'm pretty sure it's asset management of some kind. There's like some sort of asset rendering, audio, sequencing analysis. Really now? Where are you? Asset management, of course, I was being stupid there. Addressables. So this is the addressables groups window, and this shows all of the assets that I have marked as addressable. And you can see that's just these two things right now. For this, I'm going to probably come up with some new labels, actually. So let's go up to Window, Asset Management. Okay, it's not there. It's probably somewhere around here then. Yeah, labels. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new label. I'm going to call this Shared. We are going to have Pang, and then we're going to have like, Dwarfman, pretty straightforward stuff. So these are going to be in the shared labels. I'm also going to move these into a new group that I'm going to call, this shared assets, I guess. I think these are going to have the same schemas. Okay. And that's mostly because I like to keep the default group clean, because it should, basically, this should be empty until I have assets that I've marked as addressables, and then I'll move them from this group into whatever group they need to be in. This is, by the way, going to be one of the key mantras when it comes to addressables. If you're working with them, you have to be rigorous in your pursuit of project organization, or things can get nightmarish to try and handle. So we're going to go ahead and leave this as is. I'm going to move this off to the left so that we don't have to worry about it for now. And that is going to, before we can do anything else, I'm going to need to come down to, let's see, scripts, runtime. I'm going to say asset extent. Let's go ahead and collapse these. Where do I want to put you? Yeah, okay. I'm going to go ahead and come over here, create folder, asset extensions. We're going to say create folder, Unity, create folder, addressable assets, create folder, runtime. Okay, and then create folder, asset references. Okay, so from here, I'm going to go ahead and say create assembly definition file. I'm going to call this sos.addressable assets. Okay, that's going to compile. There's not really going to be much there, admittedly. In fact, I don't even think it'll actually let it compile. Yeah, right there. Yet it still shows the wheel, which is kind of infuriating. As I'm going to create a C# script that I'm going to call asset reference material. And of course it compiled, so this is probably going to get messy. Okay. I'm going to let that compile real quick. Open it up. Not sure why I opened it. It's not going to let me do that. Oh, yeah, you were probably complaining this whole time. No wonder you wouldn't do much. Give it a second. Because it's going to take a while. I need to let it compile because I have to change how what my assembly definition is referencing. So we're going to go ahead and target unity.addressables. We're going to target unity.resources. I'm sorry, resource manager. And that's pretty much it. That's all I need to worry about. So let's go ahead and hit apply there. Okay. So now this should rebuild, and I should be able to. I'm actually going to go ahead and close this just out of paranoia. So what we're doing here is we are setting up a asset reference subclass. Asset reference is the class that Addressables uses to conveniently reference addressable assets. And it has a base class that you can derive from to handle targeting specific asset references. Normally, an asset reference will target any asset that's marked as addressable. But we can write some convenience classes that will basically ignore assets that are not of the specific type that we want to target. So in this case, I'm going to make an asset reference that will only target materials. That way it's not going to target like game objects and scriptable objects and what have you. So I'm going to open this back up. While that's happening, I'm going to take a drink. Close this. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and say addressable assets. We're going to say using Unity engine.addressable assets. Then we're going to go ahead and say asset reference of T material. And then we're going to say system.serializable. And then I believe we need to say public asset reference material. And the way I'm going to do this is going to call base there. And then we're going to say public asset reference material string GUID base GUID. Okay. So for those who have not done this before, you can actually, it's not really overriding, but you can make constructors invoke base constructors. So in this case, what asset reference material with no parameters is doing is it's calling base asset reference t with no GUID passed. It's just empty. I have no idea why they didn't expose a version without a GUID, but this is a convenience method that I've noticed that works really well. And then of course we have the same method that takes a GUID and passes that to the base GUID. And yeah, this is really all we have to do here. So we're just going to say, oops, not that. Version of C asset reference T targeting material assets. Pretty straightforward. That's all we really need to do. Don't need to do anything else. Pretty sure that, yep, that's all we need to do. So, okay, let's go ahead. I don't think we need to worry about validate asset or anything like that. So we're going to let that compile, although before we do that, we're actually going to come back over to here, and I'm going to say, right, okay, I lied. I'm going to let that compile because I have to reference sos.addressable assets from my assembly definition files. All right, so runtime, arcade, game selection. Actually, I'll probably just come down to here. Let's go ahead and add SOS addressable assets. That's fine, I think. Excuse me. All right, come down to here, core. I probably don't need that for this. So, well, I might actually. Okay, so we're gonna let this compile. Trying to think about how I want to set this stuff up. I guess I'll have a separate assembly for every game. That would help keep things clean, so we don't have to worry about it. Because the core idea here is that each game should be fairly lightweight and should just be reliant on its own code base. I don't really want to have them cross-reference each other very often. It would make sense for things like Dwarfman and Miss Dwarfman to do that, but not the majority of games won't need to do that. So I'm not going to worry about it here. Let's go ahead and come back to here. And now I can make this using sleepyowl.addressable assets. And then I'm going to say, instead of, so all of these are going to be asset reference material. Okay. And, oh man, what to do about you? I guess that's okay. So we'll just leave these as is. Let that compile. And this is going to change how this looks. So you're not going to see these direct references. Oh, right. Hold on. Arcade cabinet. Right? Yeah, here we are. So, right. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so this is where code is about to start getting heavy into addressables. We're going to say using Unity Engine dot addressable assets, using Unity Engine dot resource management dot async operations, using Sleepy Owl dot addressable assets. Okay, from here we are going to say private material is going to be attract mat is equal to null. Private material unavailable mat mat is equal to null. And then before we do that, let's see. Data. So I need to say private material title mat is equal to null. And I think that's pretty good so far. So the next things we're going to need are going to be private async operation handle material. There's going to be attract handle is equal to default async operation handle. Not that. Material. Okay. And I know that I can use just the straight up default keyword, but I like to use the explicit version of this. I like to be more explicit with my code instead of letting things be inferred. Having things like var and just the core default keyword is fine, but I like to be explicit in how I do this. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste this. This is going to be our title handle, and then this is going to be our unavailable handle. Oops. Unavailable handle. All right. And we're also going to have to do this. Public void release. That's going to come in handy later. Basically, all it's going to do is say, well, we'll get to that in a second. And then we're going to say private void on attract material loaded. Async operation handle material handle. Okay, we're basically going to do this 3 times, and this is going to be on title material loaded, and then on unavailable. There we go, material loaded. Okay, so now instead of directly assigning this, what we're going to do is we are going to call. So I'm going to get rid of these. Instead, I'm going to say data.attractmat.load asset async, and we're going to take on attract material loaded here. Oh wait, sorry, I'm doing this backwards. So I prefer to do things a little bit more manually than this, but I guess actually there's no real reason why it couldn't be done like that. So I was actually thinking of this addressables.load asset async material, and then data.attractmat.runtime key. Yeah. All right. I'm going to try it a different way. So the addressables the addressables line that I just typed out is how I normally have done this in the past. I'd like to experiment with this actually. So we're going to get rid of this, and then we're going to say data.attractmat. Do I not have an overload for this? I do. Oh, that's fine. Then this I'm going to say dot complete. Oh, really? Oh, no, that gives me the handle. Okay, yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to call, this is going to be, attract handle is going to be equal to this. And then we're going to say attract, not Matt. Of course I did that again. Attract handle dot completed. Oh, completed typeless. That's kind of cool. Huh. Oh, interesting. They have percent complete now too. They might have actually had that before. Completed plus equals on attract material loaded. And then all this is going to do is we're going to say handle dot completed minus equals on attract material loaded. and then we are going to say attract mat is equal to handle dot result. Okay. So I'm going to code this with the assumption that my materials are going to um, basically always be returned and there won't be errors. But there are some safety checks that we could code in here, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. Because you could do things like make sure that the handle is valid before you do anything, and that the result isn't null and all that. But again, I'm not going to worry about that. So we're going to come down to here. I'm going to paste this a couple of times. Get back to here. Come back to here. There's going to be title mat, and this is going to be unavailable mat. It's going to be equal to there. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and say unavailable handle is equal to data dot, oops, not you, unavailable mat dot load asset async, and unavailable handle dot completed plus equals on unavailable material loaded. Get rid of that. So we can get rid of this and the other. Oh, actually, you know what? Before we do that, we are also going to call screen renderer dot shared material is equal to unavailable mat. Okay, get rid of this. Come back up to here. Paste that. Equal to. I already copied it, I guess. Come back to here. Boom. Come back to here. All right. Now, I could probably. Well, I could probably simplify this down to one material that I store and then unload the other two. But I would like to load the ones that I need into memory, so that's going to be either unavailable or it's going to be the attract and the title mats. I gotta sneeze. Excuse me. Um, and aggressive loading and unloading is something that can be done, but I try to keep that to a minimum because there is pop-in when you use addressables. If you're not careful, people will see frame stutters, not because the frame rate's dropping, but they'll see the objects like pop into existence if you're not careful. So you have to be very controlled about when you load these things, and it's best to load them and assign them when the player can't see them. That way you don't have to worry about showing a default material or anything like that. So that it was a lot of effort to basically get this to spawn all of this. And ultimately, we need to make sure that we call release. And release is going to be doing a pretty basic thing, which is just going to say if attract handle dot is valid, then we're going to say data dot attract mat dot release asset. That's all we care about. And I'm just going to copy this from everything. I'm actually going to make sure that data dot attract mat dot, does this have validate asset, runtime key is valid, release instance. I guess I could just call release asset. I'm just going to try calling release asset to see if that'll throw an error or a warning. Because usually when you try to release an invalid handle, it complains to you. It doesn't do anything, but it complains. And I want to know if it's going to do that here. So I'm going to go ahead and just say title mat and then unavailable mat. Okay. And on end exit, I'm going to call release. Okay. Yeah. So now you'll see these change, by the way, now that that's actually done, to be a sort of drop down, which is how you select assets in the addressable asset system. So I want this to, as you can see, this shows all of our materials. This is one of the problems with having long path names, by the way. It does start at the left and it does get truncated, so I could probably stretch this a little bit to like here-ish, and that'll give me, yeah, you're not going to give me much here. This is screen animation, yep. So I'm going to come back down to here. All right, actually, let's go ahead and undo that, and we're going to do that on the core ones here. We'll set this up to be there, and then there. Now we can come back, and all of these should have the same ones. All right. So now if we hit play, things should still be loaded into memory, basically. Um, it's just going to happen through addressables. And to actually showcase this, I'm going to turn on my addressable profiler events. Okay. So I'm going to go to Asset Management Profiler. So this is a window that Unity has built in. It's actually quite useful when you're working with addressables. It showcases all of the events, so the things that have requested addressables. And we're going to use this to debug what has been loaded into memory. So before I start, I am going to come over here to the screen, and I'm going to replace this with the default screen mat. Right there. So now if we come back, all of these should have their screen mats just disabled. Yep, it's going to be the basic screen mat. Okay, so now we should see all of them snap into their target screens. Yep, there we go. And if we look at our profiling events, this is to the left here. You can see that's before we started playing. And now we have 2 references to screen static, 1 reference to screen animated. That's good. We have... Oh, shoot. I totally did forget to do that. So there are a couple of core scripts that I should probably handle first. One of which is going to be initializing addressables and then loading into this menu. And you can see here that we have 3 calls to Unity Addressable Assets initialization. That is because I did not initialize it. And so all 3 of these cabinets initialized it at the same time and now have a reference to that initialization call. So that's not great. We actually want to not do that. So I am going to do a couple of things. I'm going to put you here. And then I'm going to stop playing. And... oh, man. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. All right. We are going to want to do a few things. One, we need to streamline that. So I'm going to make some core scripts here. So I'm going to make a folder, interface, say create script. I'm going to call this I addressable asset. Chooses to do this. I'm going to go ahead and create script I addressable game object. These are basically interfaces that I put together as convenience interfaces for me to have core functionality for addressables. Specifically, I use these for making sure that addressables clean themselves up properly. So this is going to be addressable assets. Addressable assets. This is going to be derived from nothing. This is going to derive from I addressable asset. This is going to come down to an interface, as is this interface. Okay, and all we're going to do here is call not public. We're going to say void release. Called to release all addressable references. Get rid of this. or how about this? Interface for classes using addressable functionality. Again, get rid of this. I'm going to say for asset classes. There's going to be interface for game object. Oh, right. What happens when I get too confident? Using Unity engine for game object assets using addressable asset functionality. And all this does is I just make a game object get transform get. It's basically a convenience way for me to make sure that they have these references. Okay, and then we're going to come over here to arcade cabinet. This is going to derive from addressable game objects. And it is invoking release already, so that should be good. Let's see. What do I want to do here? I'm going to let this compile, and then I'm going to showcase one of the shortcomings of how we just coded this. I do not actually want to call release on when we finish transitioning, and I'm going to show you why in a second. So when I play, I'm going to transition from the starting overview section to look at one of the specific cabinets. And that's fine. But now we have another problem. I have released an instance or I've released the resource for the asset reference. However, it still is loaded into memory. So the addressable profiler shows that we've gotten rid of the actual references, well, not the references, but the actual events, so the things that were storing those handles. But we need to be sure that we also set the materials to be null. But we don't actually want to do that when we transition away from these cabinets. So I don't want to call release on camera end exit. I don't want to do that. Release should only be called when we are cleaning up everything. I am going to also add a method called refresh. It's probably fine. So I'm actually going to put it up here beneath release. So public void refresh. And we're just going to go ahead and call this. From there. Paste this down here. So we're going to say if attract handle is valid. So if not that, then we're going to do all this. And likewise, if not unavailable handle dot is valid. Okay. So now it should only call refresh on start. We would probably call release when we start playing a game, and we would call refresh when we finish playing a game, or when we start exiting a game. That would let us unload all of the other activities, or all of the other arcade cabinet materials that we don't need. And let's see here. So you're all working fine. We don't really need to have you debug all the time now. If we wanted to be really aggressive about this, we could call release on end exit. or on exit end, but when we go to the overview section, we would then need to call refresh on all of them again, which is fine. But then when we transition to another one, we would basically want to call release on all but the one that you're looking at, which is all kinds of convoluted. And we would need to be careful about that because we would need to probably pass in, now that I think about it, um, like a bool value here that means hard release or hard exit. And hard exit would be interpreted as you skipped something or you skipped before it finished, and therefore it should like hardcore terminate to make sure that nothing gets loaded. Um, so yeah, we got lots of fun stuff here. I'm trying to think about how I want to handle this. I um yeah, I guess that would work. Oh boy. So usually I write helper classes for calling refresh and just kind of saying like do this thing from a top level, so it's not super complicated and micromanagey. I'm trying to think if I want to do that for this because assigning materials. So basically, what should happen? I'm gonna kind of step through what we would want our arcade cabinets to do from start enter to end exit. So on start enter, we want the arcade cabinet to start loading its addressable assets, getting those into memory, and once they're done, we want them to start instantiating things. On end enter, we want it to showcase information about the game, like its title, description, yada yada yada, um, and it should before that happens, it should actually have instantiated all of the addressables that it needs. So basically the core game. But it shouldn't start the game until you get there necessarily, and then we could swap over. Um, and then on start exit, we would start cleaning up the game itself, like getting rid of all of its recycled objects, deleting them, removing them from memory, and then on camera end exit, we would straight up release everything else, and we would assign the attract handle, or I'm sorry, the attract material to the screen again. So what I need to do here is I need to say if attract handle dot is valid, then we're just going to say screen renderer dot shared material is equal to attract mat. That's pretty much all we need to do there. And on release, I almost forgot this, I need to actually say attract mat is equal to null, title mat is equal to null, and unavailable mat is equal to null. Again, you want to make sure that these are all set to null before you basically set these up. I should probably have a default material reference here. So we're just going to say serialize field private material default screen mat is equal to null. And then I can just assign this down here. I'm just going to say, actually, even before we do that, we're going to say screen render dot shared material is equal to default screen mat. Let's go ahead and say tooltip material used on cabinet screens when no valid material has been assigned, is loaded into memory. I was going to say, it's not memory. Okay. Now, we are going to handle... Oh, man. got other issues. Oh boy. Thinking. Um, let me see here. I would probably want to do it that way, wouldn't I? That would make more sense. Okay. I'm going to change this from from a struct to a scriptable object. And that's going to allow me to make the data itself handle loading and unloading all of these materials. So that's not going to clutter up the arcade cabinet anymore. Now the arcade cabinet can worry just about um, what it needs to handle, like the actual material assignments, and then the data can handle itself, basically. So I'm going to set this to be equal to null, nil. Back to here. Go to definition. I'm going to make this a scriptable script. Really now? Cool. Scriptable object. Why? Oh, duh. Because I'm stupid. Class. Wow, I'm terrible. Novice programmer. Wouldn't you get? This is going to be .none. Now I'm going to initialize all these because I get obsessive about those things. Really, I should have done this before anyway. But it's going to be equal to true. It's new. I was just trying to get super fancy. What happens whenever I try to get super fancy? It always backfires. All right, so we're going to let that go. I'm going to come up to here. I'm going to say create asset menu. This is going to be file names equal to this, and then menu names equal to that. We're just going to say SOS slash Arcadia slash games slash game data, I guess. And then we're just going to call this arcade game data. Okay, that is pretty straightforward. Fortunately, I don't think anything else needs to change here. We're going to go ahead and say this is going to implement addressable asset. We're going to call public void release. Okay, we're going to come over to here. We'll say using Unity engine dot addressable assets using Unity engine dot resource management dot async operations. Now I'm going to move the bulk of this over to here. Same thing here. Okay, and then let's see. We're basically just going to call this. Come back over to here. Oh, right. We'll have to fix that in a second. Then I'm going to say data.release. Okay. You all are going to complain. I'm going to go ahead and call this oh, what do I want to call you? Attract material, I guess. Except I can't even spell material. Okay. I can just do this. We're going to come back here to attract map. Oh, right. So we're going to change this. Well, nope, you're probably fine actually just doing this. That's all pretty straightforward. I think we're pretty good there. Let's come back here. I'm going to get rid of all of this now. Refresh. We're going to get to that in a second. Camera and exit. We're going to get to this in a second. I'm going to come back down to here. I'm going to come back to here. Okay, on a track material loaded. We do not need to worry about you or you or you. We do, however, want to call system.action material callback. Man, that's brutal. Yep. All right. We'll get to there in a second. Nope. Let me think. Gotta do it the other way, don't I? Can't do it like that. Otherwise, we'll have stray references. So this is a little frustrating, but it is very important that you deregister completed events because if you do not, they will persist in memory, and that will ruin your day. So I actually need to change how I'm handling this. I'm going to come up to here and say using system.collections.generic. We're going to have lists of callbacks, basically. So we are going to say a couple of things. I'm going to come down to here. Private list system.action attract callbacks is equal to new list blah blah blah. Private list system.action title call oops no title callbacks is equal to new system action private list system.action and then unavailable callbacks is equal to new list this. Okay, so now we can come back down to here. This should all work just fine. Now we're just going to say for int I equals 0, I is less than attract callbacks dot count I plus plus, and then we're just going to say if attract callbacks of I does not equal null, attract callbacks of I dot invoke attract mat. Okay. Oh right, these need to be materials, don't they? So boom, 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 and boom. Okay, and then finally attract callbacks dot clear. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and come up to here. Boom and boom. And then title mat. Title callbacks. Make sure that they're not null as safety checks. And then available mat. Available callbacks. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. And now we can do public void get attract material system dot action material callback, and then we're going to just say if attract handle dot is valid, we're just going to straight up say if callback does not equal null, callback dot invoke and then attract mat, I suppose. I guess it would make more sense instead of checking is valid if I were just to say attract mat is equal to null. If attract mat does not equal null. Okay. See, but I don't want to do it that way. Actually, I want to do it like that. And then we're going to say else, and then we're going to go ahead and say this again. We'll say attract callbacks.add callback, and then I'm just going to do this in a more manual way because I don't like having Unity's code handle this. I like to be a little bit more manual in this. So we're going to say addressables dot load asset async material, and then attract material dot runtime key, and that's going to give me my async operation handle. So we'll be able to say attract handle is equal to that. Oh yeah, and actually here we're going to say if attract handle dot is done, then we're going to do this. Else, we're going to do this. See, it's a little bit of gross code that we have to do here, but attract handle dot completed plus equals on attract material loaded. Okay, all of that chunk of code was necessary just for loading one material. We have to do that multiple times. So we're going to go ahead and come over to here, and we're going to paste this, and we're going to paste this, and this is going to be get title material, title handle, then title mat, and then title callbacks, title material, and then on title material loaded. Okay, and then from there we're going to go ahead and say get unavailable material handle available mat callbacks. Okay. On unavailable material loaded. Unavailable material run key. All right. All of that effort. So now we can go back to the arcade cabinet. And we no longer need this. Instead, we can just make this a simple callback for materials. There's going to be material. And actually, we can straight up streamline this. We're just going to say on screen material loaded, and then I can get rid of these two entirely. And for now, I'm going to get rid of you. Refresh is going to be a little different. So we're going to come over here to, I guess we'll do this here. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to say underneath release, call refresh. So if is available, do all this fun stuff. Okay. Where are you called? In start, right? Yep. Right. Okay. That sucks. All right. We're going to do this. I'm just going to call refresh. This is going to call data.refresh. And then in our actual data, instead of doing this, well, this whole thing, we're just going to say, well, is going to pass in a system dot action material callback. You're going to see a lot of callbacks, by the way, when you're using addressables. So all we're going to do here is, if it is available, then we just need to say get attract material callback. And if it's not, then we want to say get unavailable material callback. That should be all we need to do, which means we can actually simplify this down to 2 lines from its previous 8, because these will all take care of handling themselves. And then I am going to say, on our arcade cabinet, we're going to call refresh. I'm actually going to make this equal to null by default, but we will pass in on-screen material loaded to it. And that should actually handle everything else. All right, so on camera end exit, we are going to set it back to the default. So we're just going to say data.get attract material on screen material loaded. Okay. So that moved the bulk of that data processing over to arcade game data, which makes sense because it should keep track of its own materials. It doesn't make sense for the arcade cabinet to care about the materials. It should just tell the data, hey, give me my materials that I need, and here's a callback to invoke whenever it's done. So that pulls a lot of that complexity out of the arcade cabinet, which allows us to actually put different complexity back in there for things like showing the screen and I don't know, showing controller information, anything really. Okay, so now I can come over to here. We're going to go to games, runtime. We're going to go to, let's see, do I have a core? I'm going to duplicate this. I'm just going to rename it Dwarfman. So I'm going to duplicate this folder. I'm going to call this peng. Come over to here. We are going to want to have a data folder. Actually, no, I'll just have it be in the root. Delete that. So we're going to say create, and then SOS Arcadia games, game data. This is going to be game data dash ping. This is going to be ping. It's not bong. My God, this is like the 4th time I've written this. Then we have the mat screen animated. That's all good. This also reduces the complexity of our actual arcade cabinet script in the inspector, which is a nice side benefit because now we don't have that data here. So I can actually just go ahead and assign, boom, there's that. We can also go ahead and come over to here. I'm going to assign our default material as that. That will be part of the prefab. All right, and then we do need to make up data objects for everything else. So let's go ahead and create SOS Arcadia games game data. We're going to call this Dwarfman, not with a capital A. We're not. Dwarfman, dwarf. It's going to be same thing, likewise. It's not available though. Okay, we're also going to go ahead and duplicate Dwarfman. We're just going to call it Ms. Dwarfman. Ms. Dwarfman. Also not available. Okay, same thing in theory, so we should just be able to assign this. So this is Dwarfman, boom. Mr. Dwarfman. Boom. So again, we're gonna hit play. Everything should look exactly the same as it did before. That refactor just for that. So we should see everything, yep, pop into existence. Again, if we were to skip all of this, it will slowly start. Oh, that's interesting. We actually have 2 references to our screen animated map now. Oh, it must be the shared material thing. I guess that makes sense. I might as well not make that shared material. I should just make that just the instance material. So instead of that, it should just be material. That makes sense. Um, Mostly because each screen is going to have an instance anyway, so it should be fine. Okay. Um, there are some other things that I probably need to do. We're probably going to call it a day there because we have addressable assets loading per cabinet, even though they are currently all sharing the same addressable asset, admittedly. Um, but there are a couple of things that I need to handle. Sort of to how do I want to phrase this? There are a couple of things I need to do to handle streamlining addressable assets references. Again, like I said, I don't like that um, there are initialization calls, multiple, that are being invoked, because that really shouldn't happen. But to get around that, I'm going to have to make my own uh, manager class that calls that initialization function, then stores its handle, and then will clear it when it's done. But internal things like uh, how it's currently being handled will have multiple references stack up. But as you can see, we do have it playing different materials to different. What in the world? Right. I don't need to do that. I probably should say uh, if data.is available. We're going to do that. There we go. Yeah, it makes sense. I was wondering why I was getting multiple things, but only after I moved around. So, so the next steps for this would probably be to instantiate the game object for the game itself. So the thing that has all of its logic, and then have that render out to a render texture that then gets rendered to the screen. And then when you go into the game, it seamlessly transitions from this world to just like what's on the screen, basically. And then from there, let's see how we get this. So we have a sequenced screen, static showing that's not available, static showing that's not available. Okay, I think that's pretty good. All right. Also, I wanna, excuse me, yawn. I'm gonna check real quick that transitioning doesn't, for some reason, call something on the. Okay. I want to make sure I wasn't calling overview debug calls. So yeah, that's a pretty good place to stop for the day. So we have addressables implemented. It's not fully featured, obviously, but it is being used. And we do have our camera pans dynamically loading the attract screen material, but we don't have the current title screen material set up yet to actually have it aggressively download or unload and load the target materials. So that's going to be something that we have to do next. But yeah, that's a pretty good place to stop for the day. So like I said, moving forward, I think the next steps are instantiating the prefab for the games themselves whenever we get to the cabinet, well, whenever we start transitioning to the cabinet, and then showing or basically rendering that out to a render texture that then gets applied to the screen here. So that's a lot of effort. But I think that's a pretty decent way to handle this. But for now, I think we're going to go ahead and call it a day. So, announcements. I should be doing a dev stream on Tuesday of this coming week. However, I will not be doing a dev stream on Thursday because I have an event that I'm showcasing TextFest at on Friday. So I'm probably going to be doing some frantic minor bits of polish to just get things feeling nice. And then from there, I am probably going to do a Saturday dev stream. And then after that, it gets a little fuzzy because I think the following Tuesday, so not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after that, is like the 23rd. So that's the week, or that's the day before Christmas Eve. So I might not be doing a dev stream then, or on Thursday of that week. I might take that week off. But keep your ear to the ground on the Discord, and I'll post there, obviously, and say final results of that stuff. But in any case, I think that's a good place to stop for the night. So, as always, I want to thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.